Good. It's been very eventful.
Yep.
It's been almost exactly a year since I moved up. Like you say, started out in Berkshire, covering loads of fantastic non-league teams, covering loads of different sports as well, which was a fantastic experience. I've supported Hartlepool United since I was a boy. Despite the southern accent, I've been up here a year, and still every time I meet another Hartlepool fan, why I'm speaking to them with it's a bit of getting used to. I am already on my 4th permanent manager. Pool's change manager again. This week.
Last week or this week, yeah.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. Obviously, that is clearly not a formula for success. 16 permanent managers in the last decade. It's certainly eventful being a journalist up here, and obviously, as I say, a fan as well. When I first came up here, Kevin Phillips was in charge. Name that will be familiar to so many football fans up and down the country, not least because of his goal scoring for Sunderland, but played for England and loads of other teams as well. Was a real coup at the time for Pools to get someone like Kevin Phillips, and great to see someone of such a high profile being willing to come down and cut their teeth in non-league. He started out in South Shields. He did a couple of years there. They got promoted to the National League North. Then he took over at Pools in January of last year. And he took over actually at a time when we're one of those teams that obviously we have a proud, rich history of being in the Football League. And I think it's painful to a lot of fans to be in the National League. There's always a sense that Pools have almost like a divine right to be back in the Football League. But as we have found out from the last 8 or 9 years of being in the National League, you don't have a divine right to beat anybody. It's such a difficult division. I'm sure we'll maybe talk about the debate surrounding 2 up, 2 down, but the first season that we went down, originally we finished 17th. We then spent 6 years in the National League. We got back up for 2 years, went back down. We finished 12th last season. It was a pretty underwhelming campaign. My second game in the job, we lost 7-1 at local rivals Gateshead.
I bet you're thinking, what the hell am I doing up here?
Yeah, I think I was thinking that even before kickoff, to be fair, Dan, but it's been topsy-turvy. Kevin Phillips left in April. That was controversial in and of itself. He eventually alleged through his representatives he had been offered a 2-year contract for meeting a 60-point target, but instead Pools appointed Darren Sarl, who was manager at Stevenage, Yeovil, Woking, so plenty of National League experience. He was actually the favourite for the job when Phillips got it in January, and he certainly had a really good knowledge of the Pools players when he was first appointed. So there's definitely a suggestion amongst fans that he had been lined up for the job in the summer, and that almost it didn't matter what Phillips did.
Right.
I mean, that's only rumour and speculation. Obviously, Kevin Phillips says one thing, Darren Sarl says one thing, the club says another. What we do know is that it didn't work out with Darren Sarl in charge. He survived 15 games, and to be honest, I'm always a big advocate of giving managers time, and you could see what they were trying to do, but it actually felt like too many games, if I'm being completely honest. It went so wrong. We had 7 hours without scoring a goal at home, 4 red cards in the first 10 games. I mean, we were criticised for being too soft last season, and Sarl promised to make us more combative and aggressive, but I'm not sure what he was saying in the dressing room.
Maybe too aggressive at times.
Yeah, I think they took those instructions too literally. We've had Lenny Lawrence in charge of late, legend of the game, 9 years in charge of Charlton, successful spell in charge of Middlesbrough, one of the original 20 Premier League managers, turned 77. He won't thank me for saying that, turned 77 in December, but he loves football. We asked him what motivates him to keep going, and he just said he doesn't like playing golf and he doesn't like sitting on the beach. So he's not sure what else he would have to do. So he did 3 months in charge, and Anthony Limbrick, who's been working as the head coach and was generally expected to be Lawrence's eventual successor. We just thought it was going to happen in the summer, but Lawrence has decided. He's also on the board, Lenny Lawrence. He works in all. I think he's had every single job title other than player under the sun in the last 2 or 3 years. So he's decided now's the time to basically switch places. So he's going to be the assistant. Limbrick's going to be the man in charge. So
is he finally getting back on the golf course then?
Yeah, exactly. Remains to be seen how it's going to work out. But it's always eventful. It's eventful at any club, isn't it? But certainly feels really eventful at Pools at the minute.
So you got it was quite a busy deadline day as well for yourselves.
Yeah.
So Miley came in and actually was there a last minute equaliser at the weekend? Or,
He did indeed.
Yeah, the weekend. Yeah.
He did indeed.
How's that transfer being received? Obviously, his brother being at Newcastle, and he was at Newcastle himself as an academy player. He's obviously got talent there. So is he looking at a player to kind of carry you forward in the future?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really stood out about Pools this season is not just having a 77-year-old manager. We've had a really experienced squad. Nicky Featherstone, one of the midfielders, is 36. We've got Gary Medine, again, another name be really familiar to loads of football fans. He's 34. Luke Waterfall, the captain, won promotion from the National League twice. He's 34. Our fullbacks, 30. Our goalkeeper's 32. We've got a lot of experienced players, so it's really important, I think, especially at this stage in the season, to try and bring in some young blood. There's been a few heavy legs of late as well. That certainly stood out. You guys know what it's like. Non-league, the schedule is so unrelenting throughout the season. There's loads of travelling. You play Saturday, Tuesday. It can feel like a bit of a thankless task at times. So important that Pools, I mean, have at least one eye on the future. It's all about finding that balance between, I mean, we're still sort of within touching distance of the playoffs. There's a lot of teams in and around it. And we've played more games than a lot of the teams, which I think is going to work against us. We've been playing catch up because we had such a poor start. Our form's been reasonably good, but we've drawn 8 of the last 16. So if we could have turned a couple of those draws into wins, we might be having a different conversation. But Miley's had a good start. He's obviously had a great footballing education, having been at Newcastle. He's very slight. I mean, he makes me look like Peter Crouch or someone like that. He is diminutive, but he's technically very good. And a lot of the time, I think, if I'm honest, prior to when Hartlepool first got relegated, I had a sort of misconception about non-league football, that it's all about being physical, competitive, robust, combative. And obviously there is an element to that, but if you look at the top end of the National League table, now you've got York, Barnet and Gateshead in the top 5. I mean, they're by far the 3 best footballing sides in the league. Rochdale, another really good footballing side, they're 6th or 7th. So it goes to show that football at all levels is evolving. We all know that there's more than one way to win a game of football, but someone like Miley with that technical quality, there's quite a lot of debate around the standard of the pitches in the National League, not least the one at Hartlepool, that they do tend to cut up around this. So that's going to be a bit of a culture shock for him, going from, I imagine, the surfaces that he's been playing at Newcastle. Exactly. So that's going to be different. But he looked good on Saturday, played the final half an hour, progressive with the ball, nothing too fancy, just keeps it moving, keeps Pools ticking over, never afraid to show for the ball. He got his goal. I don't think he's been signed for his goal-scoring prowess necessarily, but
a great finish.
Yeah, what a way to start, especially for a young man, only 21, really limited experience of senior football, played 8 times at Newport, but other than that, nothing. Just a fantastic way to start, and he's a local lad as well. We've got quite a few lads from the northeast. I'm always recommending to the hierarchy that we bring in more southerners, but that's on.
Make yourself more at home.
Yeah, exactly. It's always nice to hear another southern accent. But great start from him.
So talking of southern accents, you're at Sutton on Saturday. That's a massive game with them being 2 places ahead of you in the league. Do you see that as a must-win game to carry on chasing those playoffs so they don't gain ground on you or move higher up?
Well, we've got 17 games left. I think we probably need to get 70 points to get in the playoffs, maybe even a couple more. So we probably need to win 10 of our last 17. Sutton are banging form. It's not a great time to play them. As you say, it's a long journey. We've had a lot of travelling in the last few weeks. We played Barnet away in midweek, got comprehensively outplayed. There we were at Braintree on Saturday. We were at Wealdstone a couple of weeks ago. So there's been loads of travelling. As you guys know, that's just the way things go. You've got to play the games at some point. It just so happens that we've got a run of games down south, which of course is not necessarily a bad thing for me, but for the players and staff and whatnot, it can be a challenge. I think obviously it's going to be Anthony Limbrick's first game as the figurehead. He will obviously try and change things. He's got a reputation as being a really possession-based manager, but he inherits a squad that was signed mostly by Darren Sarll, who is at the opposite end of the footballing spectrum. He likes to play direct Route 1 football, so some of the players might not necessarily be especially well suited to how he wants to do things, and I think you've got to be careful to balance your natural instinct for how you want to do things and the footballing reality. I think we're not expecting Pools to come out and play like Barcelona on Saturday, but there might be some changes. There might be a slightly more positive, proactive approach. I think a point would be a good result, to be honest with you, lads. If we can get a point, we've then got 3 home games in the space of a week. We play Tamworth, Maidenhead and Altrincham, 2 sides below us in the table, and then Altrincham, another of our direct rivals.
Yeah.
We probably have to get 7 points at least from those 3 games to keep ourselves in contention. If I'm honest, I feel like it's going to be an uphill battle. There's certainly still belief within the group, but just the fact that the National League is so competitive this year. Obviously, as I said, there's that debate around 2 up and 2 down. We've seen teams dominate the league in recent years. There's not necessarily one outstanding. I would actually say there's 3 outstanding teams in York, Forest Green and Barnet, but there's not one with a massive financial war chest that is going to be able to necessarily outbid the rest of the league, albeit York spent a room of £350,000 on Josh Stones, so there are obviously teams willing to spend money, but it's so competitive. There are loads of good teams. I heard what you guys were talking about just before I came on. There's 10 or 12 really, really top teams in there. I mean, there's 15 former Football League clubs playing in the National League, obviously including National League South and North. It's a massively competitive league. Everyone takes points off everyone. That's one of the outstanding features of the division, but it's definitely going to be a challenge for Pools, I would suggest. All hope's not lost, though.
So, what do you make of the 3 up, 3 down? Obviously, we find it a very positive thing.
Yeah, completely. I think it's starting to build such momentum now, isn't it? The conversation, that I think it's going to be hard to stop. I know there's concerns about the independent regulator, and they've suggested they want to sort out the financial disparity between the Premier League and the rest of the Football League before they address the National League issue, but it's starting to feel like a wave that is not going to be able to be stopped. I think first and foremost, it's really just a matter of fairness, isn't it? You look at the quality of sides in the National League, and you look at the quality of sides in League Two. And as a Hartlepool fan, you know, I've seen plenty of League Two football, I've seen plenty of National League football over the last decade. There really is very little difference in quality. So it seems to me unfair that there are so many good teams in the National League and they are reduced to 1 automatic promotion spot and 1 playoff spot. I mean, it's a year's work for these teams, and you can finish 2nd and still not get promoted. That really doesn't sit well with me. And you look at how well teams have done in recent years, National League teams, how well they've done. I mean, Luton, obviously, foremost amongst them. They've gone from the National League to the Premier League in, 9 or 10 years. You look at Wrexham, albeit they've got Hollywood backers. They're in 3rd in League One. Stockport, they've got a former Hartlepool manager, Dave Challoner. So I say this with some bitterness. I certainly say this through gritted teeth, but they're doing fantastically as well. Like you say, Notts County pushing for promotion in League Two, and even the teams that went up last year, Chesterfield, I think they're 10th, and Bromley, who are not one of the biggest budgets, biggest fan bases, biggest reputations, they're 16th. They've acquitted themselves perfectly well. And you look at the teams, Hartlepool are a good example, teams that come down from League Two into the National League. It's very, very difficult to get out. I think there are obviously concerns that some of the League Two clubs, especially the lower end of the League Two clubs, are going to have issues with supporting the idea because they don't want to be put at extra risk. The one thing I would say is for the competitiveness of the league, I think when there's only 2 down, sometimes there's a sense that you often get 3 or 4 clubs at the bottom of League Two who have all sorts of financial issues, and it's almost just about being the 3rd worst. And I think that isn't healthy for the state of the league. I don't think it's actually healthy for the state of the club as well. It means that owners and chairmen and stuff can get away with doing the bare minimum in order just to keep their side in the Football League, sometimes actually a reset, a wake-up call, whatever you want to call it, is something that's needed. And of course, for these sides that do go down from League Two, because whether they like it or not, there are going to be 2 teams at least that do drop down, that it's then going to be in their interests for their promotion place, because exactly. So I think you could make, I'd be surprised if anyone who follows non-league was not in favour of it. There's obviously going to be a bit more kickback in terms of Football League clubs, but even from the point of view of a Football League club, I think there are advantages to it. I think it's more fair, it's going to be beneficial to the health of both the Football League and the National League, and it's going to increase competition even further. It's going to prevent those League Two clubs from stagnating. It's going to give some National League clubs who maybe get stranded in mid-table towards the second half of the season, it's going to give them more to play for as well. It can only be a good,
another playoff place, won't it?
Yeah, exactly. It can only be a good thing. Let's hope that the powers that be see sense, because as we've said, the standard is really good. There's only 2 part-time teams in the National League now, and even they are really impressive. Almost professional outfits. It seems to me a no-brainer that's going to happen. It's just when it happens, and obviously the sooner the better.
Definitely, yeah. We were saying it's basically a 5th professional league now, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It is. And I mean, you've just got to look at the list of players that have started out in the National League, come through the National League. Obviously, Jamie Vardy's the obvious, but Jordan Pickford, Chris Smalling, Callum Wilson, Adam Webster, Max Kilman, £40 million player. Now, there's so much talent in the league, and I think by fostering the competitive nature of the league, you're only going to help to produce more and more talent, and the health of the grassroots game is fundamentally important to the health of all football. As high as the national team, you've got to have a healthy foundation for teams and players and whatever to be successful at a higher level as they progress.
Definitely.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said, Robbie. Thanks for coming on. I'm one of those guys I'm completely mad about non-league. I love to hear stories about games, about goals. So I just want to ask you, what's probably the best non-league game that you've ever watched live, and what's the best goal that you've seen live in non-league, of course?
Great question. The best game for me personally would have to be the National League playoff final in 2021 when Hartlepool got promoted. As a Pools fan in the 21st century, it's been more about suffering than celebration. I think we've had 3 top half finishes in the last 17 years, and in 2 of those we finished 12th, so not exactly something to shout about. We had one fantastic season when we won promotion. As we've just discussed, it's very difficult to win promotion out of the National League, and we'd been there for 5 or 6 seasons. It felt like we were never going to get out, to be honest. And we've had some, should we say, questionable managerial appointments over the last 10 years. I mean, I think about Dave Jones, a really successful manager. He became famous for eating sausage sandwiches in his press campaign, and that sort of set the tone for how his tenure was going to go. Keith Curl, another big name in the footballing world, didn't work out at all. His most famous moment was when, in a post-match interview, he suggested he hoped his wife was going to be in a sexy mood when he got home. The lone light of his tenure, we had Paul Hartley, who after a 3-month search for a manager, we plucked a manager from relative obscurity in Scottish League One, and with the utmost respect to Scottish League One, there was a reason Paul Hartley was there, because that was a complete nightmare. So it's been more miserable than it has been joyous, that's for sure. But we had one really good season. We finished 4th in the regular season. We played Bromley in the quarterfinals. We beat them 3-2. We played Stockport away in the semi-finals, and it was the back end of COVID, so it was only home fans, barring 1 or 2 directors. My dad at the time, I'm not sure if he still is, but he's the honorary president, so we managed to wangle our way in. It was the ultimate smash and grab. Pools really sat back. I'm not sure we had a shot until 20 minutes from time when we took the lead, and it was great to be able to watch it with my dad, but he's one of those people that can't help himself but scream and shout. He's
I think we've all seen that when I'm
he's winding up the Stockport fans no end. The point of the says if you say one more thing, I'm going to throw you down these stairs. Lo and behold, 2 minutes later, Pools score. Obviously, he's giving it the big one. We went through to the final, one of the most amazing but also nerve-wracking matches that I've ever watched. Pools went 1-0 up. We hung on and hung on. It was again a bit of not a smash and grab, but we certainly had our backs to the wall in the second half. I remember it was the 96th minute, and it was the first time I'd allowed myself to think, we're going to do it, we're going to be promoted. And up steps Torquay United's goalkeeper, who scored a 96th minute equaliser to send the game to added time. And at that point, we were out on our feet. We'd given everything. And so it was really a case of holding on until penalties. Their goalkeeper's doing this god-awful dance after he scored. And I think it felt like it was written in the stars for him to be the hero. And he was the hero for the first 2 penalties because he saved them both. Pools remarkably managed to turn the shootout around. I think it went to about 8 or 9, and Brad James, who was a goalkeeper who we just brought in on loan from Middlesbrough, he'd only played about 3 or 4 times because our first choice got injured right before the playoff campaign, became the hero when he saved the penalty. So that was both the best and worst game that I've ever watched. To be honest, I mean,
I bet that was a massive crowd as well. That's 2 big fan bases, really, Torquay and Hartlepool.
Yeah, I mean, it was, unfortunately, because it was still the tail end of COVID, it was still somewhat restricted. So at least that meant that no one was within 3 meters of my dad, so no one was threatening to throw it. So that was good. At the time, Pools fans were a bit put out because it was at Ashton Gate, which is obviously far closer to Torquay than it is to Hartlepool. So it was a long journey, but obviously it was worthwhile. I think probably there's still a few Pools fans that are partying in Bristol now. It was fantastic. It was a fantastic day, and the goal that we scored that day, while it wasn't the best, it was certainly one of the most memorable. I mean, there's been some great goals, but in terms of the pure feeling of elation, it was probably that one. Nowadays, it's an entirely different proposition. I watch Pools as a fan first and foremost, of course, but as a journalist as well. I write the reports. I do commentary for a lot of the away games as well. So it's difficult. You obviously have to contain yourself within reason. It's not always possible. When they played Braintree on Saturday and Jamie Minley scored that 96-minute equaliser, I was doing the commentary, and at 95:30, I said to my fellow commentator, I said, they're not going to score today. I think that's it. And lo and behold, 30 seconds later, they scored.
That's a good curse to have, though.
Yeah, well, exactly. It was difficult to contain myself, but it's those moments that keep you coming back as a fan, isn't it? You know,
absolutely.
We all know how difficult it can be to follow your team, how painful it can be some of the time. It's so frustrating. It can be so maddening. It can be so emotionally draining, but in the end, those are the moments that make it all worthwhile. So that was certainly a special day. Great to share it with my dad, even if I had a headache for about a week after. And in the end, we're back in the National League, which is obviously a bit of a shame, but we'll always have those memories.
No, that's amazing.
Oh, lovely. Yes, I see, hearing you talk, I see a lot of similarities with. I'm a Luton Town fan. I don't know if you heard that before. Obviously, going down into the Football League and having that. I mean, I think we lost in 3 playoff finals, and it really is heartbreak. And like, do you think Hartlepool will ever? Obviously, they probably will get back into Football League, but will they ever like sustain a Football League place, or do you generally feel that it's just going to be playing in that bottom half of Football League 2, toying around?
Great question.
Obviously, Luton have just gone like that. Can you see Hartlepool doing that?
Well, I'm not sure I can ever see Hartlepool playing in the Premier League as much as I would love to, but obviously Luton are the blueprint for success. There are other teams that have reached pretty high heights. I mean, one of my first memories of following Pools was the 2004-5 season when I was about 6 or 7. They reached the League One playoff final. We were 1-0 up against mighty Sheffield Wednesday until 10 minutes to go, when our centre-half pulled down their striker in the box. Not only did Sheffield Wednesday get a penalty, our centre-half was sent off. We lost the game in extra time. So another agonising moment. But it goes to show that Pools are not one of the biggest clubs. They're never going to be one of the biggest clubs. They're never going to have one of the biggest fan bases. But nonetheless, there is potential there if things are done the right way. When things are going well, we can get 6,500, 7,000 fans in there. There is a really passionate fan base. It's one of those clubs, maybe a bit like a Luton, where it's old-fashioned in a sense. The football team remains very much at the heart of the community. People live and breathe the football club. They work all week to be able to go and watch their side, and so there's definitely some potential. Obviously, the challenge that we failed to do was when you get back into the football league, you've got to sustain yourself as a football league club. That obviously comes down to you've got to have a competitive playing squad, but also you've got to have stability in the boardroom. There's been quite a lot of controversy. There's been quite a lot of owners at Hartlepool over the last 10, 15 years. So that obviously adds another challenge, and that's a challenge certainly that all fans of football and certainly non-league football will be very, very familiar with. Pools are probably never going to be able to buy their way out of the National League, and certainly not going to be able to buy their position in the Football League, but nonetheless, you still like to hope that they certainly have a future as a Football League club, especially if we get 3 up, 3 down. I mean, to be fair, Pools could probably do with 12 up, 12 down the way things are going, but you never know. As Pools proved in 2021, it's not about always having the biggest budget. That's one of the reasons why non-league can be so great, because you can achieve success without having a massive budget. I mean, I think of the teams in the National League now. Altrincham, they look like they're going to finish in the playoffs for the second successive season. They've got a relatively limited budget, but they do things the right way, and therefore they achieve success. So we're certainly hoping that the Pools, who would fancy themselves as a bigger club with potentially more pulling power than Altrincham, certainly throughout their history, are going to be able to do that. I mean, you need a lot of things to go right. You need to have a good manager, you need to have a good playing squad, you need a little bit of luck, you need to avoid injuries here and there. But I think they can do it. And of course, as a fan, first and foremost, rather than a supposedly objective journalist, your heart always rules your head, doesn't it? You always like to think that there's that possibility, and it is often the hope that keeps you coming back as well. So certainly we like to think that Pools will be in the Football League again before too long. I'm not sure it's going to be this season. I think that's a bit of a long shot, but certainly within the next 3 or 4 years, we hope to see Pools back in the Football League.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. Definitely, it'd be good to see them back in there. Obviously, when you were down in Berkshire for Newbury Weekly News, you covered a lot of non-league football clubs in the area. Have you managed to catch any other non-league clubs up your way?
I haven't, to be honest. There's a great non-league scene. I had a fantastic time, first thing to say, down in Berkshire with some great teams. Obviously, Dan, your Tadley, Thatcham Town, Hungerford Town, Newbury. One of the things that always stands out when you go to a place like that is they might not be the biggest, they might not be the flashiest, but the people that dedicate themselves to making the teams run, making the teams successful, are so passionate, and that's obviously so outstanding. They are really so much the heartbeat of the club, and of course it's the people that really make football clubs what they are. Without the people, you can have a nice flashy stadium, but it's going to be soulless. So it's all about the people. We've got a great non-league scene around here. Pools certainly make use of it. The likes of Shildon, Redcar, Whitby, to send some of our young lads on loan. We've got people out on loan at all of those clubs this season. FC Hartlepool is our other really, really local team, and they had a pre-season friendly in the summer, which hopefully is going to be something that now becomes an annual event. It's a chance for Pools to give back to the town. It was a really well-attended game. It was a chance for Pools to field a load of trialists. They had a look at a load of players that they were thinking about signing in the summer. And for FC Hartlepool, it represents a bit of a windfall in terms of finances, and obviously a chance to test themselves against a professional outfit. So that was really exciting. It can be relentless. It tends to be Saturday, Tuesday, and a lot of the time here at Pools. So I haven't been able to take in as much other football as I like, because obviously there's some massive clubs as well. I went to see Sunderland once, and some massive clubs in the area, Newcastle, Middlesbrough, who I'm always wishing Pools would maybe make more use of their connections with them to bring in some more loan players. We have done that at times, hasn't always been successful, it has to be said. There's some massive clubs, there's some not so massive clubs, and they've all got something to offer. So as I spend more time up here, as I say, I've been up here for almost a year, hopefully I'll get to see more of those teams.
Yeah, that'd be great. And it was also good, that pre-season friendly do you find that some Hartlepool fans, when you're away from home, especially down the south, they go and watch FC Hartlepool?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Local clubs.
Yeah, without a doubt, there's loads of local clubs to go and see and support as well. You guys know how important it is to get people through the gate, get people watching local football. In the National League this year, it seems like Pools have had so much travelling. We mentioned some of the teams at the start of this conversation. Obviously, you've got loads of teams based in and around London as well. You've also got Forest Green and Yeovil. Yeovil on longest journey, I think it's about 7.5 hours. It actually happened that the team bus broke down on the journey, so they did their warm-up in a motorway service station.
Did you win the game?
Was that on a Tuesday night?
Do you know what? We won it, and it was one of only 2 or 3 games we won under Darren Sarles. So maybe they should
get in there more often.
Yeah.
Common services.
When things went according to his plan, we tended to lose the game, which probably is not a great reflection on him. I have to say, I always got on well with Darren Sarles, so he always treated me with loads of respect. He was really forthcoming in interviews as well, so nothing against him, just didn't work out. Hopefully he goes on and has success elsewhere. But there's loads of great teams. We've got Blythe Spartans who are pretty local to us, who have endured a really difficult campaign. They obviously got relegated from the National League North last season, and it's been really difficult. They've had they're near the bottom. They've had all sorts of ownership issues. They've changed the manager a couple of times. They basically had a complete overhaul of the playing squad. They almost went into the season with, I think on a week before the season, they only had 6 or 7 players, and that's why it's so important to get out and watch your local teams. There's so much money at the top of the game, and obviously the Premier League clubs and whatever, they produce massive money for the league and whatnot, and for the people affiliated to them, because they bring in massive TV audiences. But non-league football is the lifeblood of English football, full stop. It's massively important that we support these teams. I'm not sure that there's anywhere in the world that has a non-league system like ours. I mean, we were talking about the quality of the National League, the quality of the 5th division of English football. I imagine that would rival 3rd division, 2nd divisions in some big, well-resourced countries. And a lot of that is because of the passion of the fans, because people are willing to part with their hard-earned cash to go and watch the team, to get through the gate, to buy a beer, buy a burger, buy a programme, whatever. That is what keeps football clubs at non-league level alive for the most part. It's such a massive thing, so I would always urge people to get out and go and watch their local team. And it's not just a case of supporting local, it's because there's some fantastic players out there's some fantastic young coaches. There are so many brilliant stories. That's one of the things I love about non-league, whether it's a player, whether it's someone who's spent half a century dedicating their life to the club, whether it's a long-serving manager, whether it's someone who's got completely unique ideas about how things should be done. There are wonderful stories that run through every club up and down the country, and that's why it's so, not just so important, but why it's so worthwhile to go and support your local side.
Yeah, and I think that sums up very, very well, obviously, why we started this podcast and why we do what we love to do. So, yeah, I really appreciate your words and thoughts there. It was brilliant to speak to you again, Robbie.
Likewise.
Hopefully, Hartlepool can give you a few more joyous moments in the next few years. So, yeah, we'll be looking out for the results.
We'll see, Dan. I say that more in hope than expectation. Flashbacks to the 7-1 defeat last season and relegations and relegation battles. But as I say, we live in hope all the time. I think they've got a good young coach, really exciting coach who's got some good ideas about the game. They have a decent playing squad. Obviously, in the summer there will be a reasonable turnover, I'm sure. But they've got a good fan base. If they can keep the fans coming through the door, we have a really good atmosphere when it's going well. We like to think we'll be back in the Football League before too long, but I hope that if we do get back in the Football League, you'll still let me on this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll always be welcome, mate.
Thanks so much, gents.
Brilliant. It's been fascinating to listen to you, Robbie.
Great to speak to you both. Thanks so much,
mate. Thank you, bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Decent.
Decent.
Quite interesting actually to get like a northern perspective on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Very good. That's what we need. It's a bit of something up north.